Hello, welcome to a new list where we'll take a look at one of the most unfair mini console comparisons out there. Do you think it's fair to compare the NES Mini with the PC Engine Mini? Let's find out if Nintendo's 8-bit system, with its incredible library, can hold its own against the superior power of the PC Engine and its 16-bit GPU. Ready or not, here we go! Pinball games are always fun, and personally, I really like them, especially the 8-bit and 16-bit ones. Alien Crush is a solid pinball game, considering the limitations of being released back in 1988. These aren't realistic pinball tables, but fantastic ones filled with enemies and an alien atmosphere. If you had a Sega Genesis, you might remember Devil's Crush, this game's sequel, also developed by Compile. By the way, Compile made quite a few amazing games. Would you like me to make a list video about them? Let me know in the comments below what you think. I'm a huge Mario fan, both the character and the games, and for me, Tetris is one of the most entertaining games ever. So Dr. Mario should have been perfect for me. And while it's not that I don't like it, I can't say I love it either. Still, I have to admit it's a really good puzzle game. Addictive, fun, and with its pill and virus mechanics, a bit more complex than other falling block games where you just clear lines. Why include this game on a PC Engine Mini when you've also got Outrun on the library? Well, Victory Run isn't a bad game, and I guess Sega's title was probably off limits due to licensing. Back in 1987, when this game was released, it must have been a solid substitute, since Outrun wouldn't come to this console until a few years later. While very similar, it did have a couple of unique features, like choosing car parts before each race, and it was actually inspired by the real Paris-Dakar Rally. And if you've noticed the name of this channel, you can probably guess that I really like this next one, both the game and its sequel. It's a fantastic Capcom platformer, and in my opinion, even better than Mega Man. It's quite challenging, like most arcade titles, but it's also really entertaining. In the country where I live, the TurboGrafx-16 was sold in a bundle with blazing lasers. It wasn't very common for a console's launch title to be a shoot-'em-up. Usually, it was a platformer like Sonic or Mario, since that genre appealed to most players. But the PC Engine was the perfect console for shoot-'em-up fans. It had tons of them, and many were excellent. The very first one was this title from Compile, one of the best on the system. From one shoot-'em-up to another, but this time something completely different. Much simpler and more basic, yet incredibly fun. The graphics are practically non-existent, there's no music, and just a few sound effects. But Goliath didn't need any of that to deliver hours of fun. If I remember correctly, it was the very first arcade machine I ever saw. I didn't play it because I was too little, but I still remember the enemy graphics. If Blazing Lasers was one of the best shoot-'em-ups on the PC Engine, this one is the best. In fact, R-Type might just be one of the greatest shoot-'em-ups ever made, and this version could very well be the best console port. Even if, like me, you're not that into the genre, this is one game you absolutely need to try. And if you enjoy difficult games, this one will give you a real challenge. But Ninja Gaiden is also a very entertaining action game. The NES version is graphically stunning for an 8-bit title released back in 1988. The Master System also had its own Ninja Gaiden, developed by Sims instead of Tecmo, and some people even say it's better than this one. What do you think? The PC Engine was a sales success in Japan, but in the rest of the world it went a bit unnoticed. For example, in my country the distribution was very limited. You could only buy it in a few big department stores, not in regular video game shops. Ninja Spirit never made it to the PAL region, and we missed out on one of those games that really showed this was a true 16-bit console. It's a pretty tough hack and slash, but with solid graphics and gameplay. And if you are looking for the best beat-em-up on the NES, here it is. This adaptation of the arcade Double Dragon 2 is the best one. It even included some changes that improved on the original. For example, although it's a beat-em-up, this version also adds some well-done platforming mechanics. And of course, the two-player mode of these games is super fun. Unfortunately, the second controller for the NES Classic Mini had to be bought separately. Third-person shooters from this era weren't exactly my favorites. Sega made quite a few of them, after Burner, Thunderblade, and they were pretty successful, but not really my style. That said, Space Harrier did grab my attention, mainly because instead of piloting a ship, you actually control an armed character. At a time when most protagonists simply moved side to side across the screen, seeing this kind of perspective on a home console in the late 80s was pretty innovative. And if you compare it with the Master System version, you can clearly see the superior power of this console. Now, as for Mario, this was the best Mario game until Super Mario World came along as its sequel. Super Mario Bros. 3 might even be the best game on the console, and it set the stage for 2D Mario games that are still hugely popular today. It introduced new transformations, an impressive number of levels for an 8-bit game, and something that became a trademark of the Mario series: the world map, where you move the character to select stages. Just like Mario or Sonic, the PC Engine also had its own mascot, Bug, a big-headed caveman who starred in several platformers and even a shooter. This is the second entry in the series. It's your classic platform jumping game, but with a couple of unique features. One of them was the ability to take down enemies with a headbutt instead of just the typical stomp. It's a great game, probably one of the best on the console. And speaking of great games, if Super Mario Bros. 3 was the best game on the NES, then Kirby's Adventure has to be the second best. It's also a platformer, but the new mechanics it introduced made it a true masterpiece. The graphics, sound, and gameplay all contributed to its success. But for me, the real revolution was the ability to swallow enemies and use them as weapons, as well as inflate yourself to float longer in the air. This game is the third entry in the Bubble Bobble saga, and at the same time the second part of Rainbow Islands. In my opinion though, it feels much closer in style to Bubble Bobble. It was developed by Taito, like the others, but this one was released exclusively for home consoles, while the previous ones were arcade adaptations. The game is incredibly well regarded, but it never came out in the PAL region. If they didn't distribute their best titles, how could they expect their console to succeed? Kid Icarus went a little unnoticed when it was first released in 1986, but over time it's become something of a cult classic. Graphically and musically it wasn't anything amazing. Well, it was 1986, so you couldn't expect much more. But if a game is fun, it can easily make up for those shortcomings. It's a platformer with the mechanic of using your bow to shoot arrows and take down enemies. It's one of those Nintendo franchises that, for some reason, has been forgotten, just like F-Zero. Does this game look familiar but under a different name? You might have gone through the same thing I did. Back in the day, I played Sega's Wonder Boy on my Game Gear, and it's almost identical to this Hudson title. That happened because Sega bought the rights to the game's name and characters from Westone, so Hudson found a way around it, releasing basically the same game but without the title or the sprites, calling it New Adventure Island. It's a really good game, just as good as Wonder Boy, and what I especially loved were the skateboarding stages. Super fun. The sequel to Contra was called Super C, Super Contra, but in some countries like mine, it was released as Probotector 2, with robots as the protagonists instead of humans. It's a side-scrolling action platformer, challenging but really entertaining. The graphics were improved, and it introduced several new features, including these slanted platforms you're seeing right now. When I think of Hudson, the very first thing that comes to mind is Bomberman and its multiplayer. Bomberman 93 is also among the best games on a console, but in this case, it's not really about the technical side of things, which isn't bad at all, but about the multiplayer experience. That's what makes this game truly shine. Of course, you needed a multi-tap to connect enough controllers, and luckily, they also released one for the mini console so you could enjoy it. I find it incredible that this shooter was released all the way back in 1986. Gradius was a massive arcade hit, and being able to play such a solid version at home must have felt like a real luxury back then. I think this was the game that really introduced the idea of upgrading your ship's weapons by collecting power-up capsules. And that's it for this rather unfair comparison. In the end, I realized that the vast NES library does have some true masterpieces that make up for its lack of raw power. But if I had to choose one console, I might go with the PC Engine. Not because I think it's better, but simply because back in the day I missed out on so many of its games due to poor distribution, and I'm curious to explore them now. I'll wrap it up here, but before I go, just a quick reminder. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, drop a comment telling me what mini console you prefer, subscribe if you love classic gaming, and hit that notification bell so YouTube lets you know when the next video is up. It won't be long. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.